see what he can do in the midst of unbelievers, on the leading edge with his word, his power, his grace, and his mercy. For God's sakes, we're Lutheran. This is what we know.
I think Matthias Loy also left, and they started a new synod, and all of it over these issues. And they continue to write even later, kind of, pounding on this concept of, we are salvation in view of faith, predestination from a Lutheran perspective and not from a Calvinistic perspective. But I wanted to shed more light into that because a lot of people, like you just said, they believe that this whole story started with, Walther. There was nobody before Walther. I think that's a myth. And there's also a myth as far as like everybody was in agreement with this position when this is not true. Like I believe, like I said, Ohio was in disagreement. A synod broke up over this, and they remain Lutheran. And I would even argue they remain confessional. Like if you go to the Formula of Concord and whatnot, and you also mentioned the Catechism or Gerard, there was an issue over this. It was not so clean cut. All of us believe the same thing. So if you could elaborate on that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, this gets a little mixed up, but that's Lutheran history. I can't smooth it all out. The Pennsylvania Synod, which was basically started by Muhlenberg, as that grew, and he was a tremendous worker for 40 years, and had a tremendous family too. And he was a serious Lutheran. He came from Halle University. I mean, the fact is, every Lutheran group that came over from Europe to America, they were largely influenced by Pietism and Halle, but to a greater or lesser extent. Well, the General Synod, because it was influenced by Schmucker, who only went to Princeton, so he had no Lutheran education. And then he became the professor at Gettysburg for something like 40 years. And so, and he was not alone, but a lot of people thought, well, Calvinists and Lutherans are almost the same. Why don't we have a union denomination? And some of those have developed, like the E&R, which became United Church of Christ. They were a union denomination, and they wanted their General Synod to be union denomination, and they also liked revivals. And so then because of this Pietism emphasis, they liked revivals. They did not like Lutheran liturgy. They did not like Lutheran hymns. There was some of that, but it finally got to the point in the late 1860s where it was just anything goes. So half the General Synod said, that's it, we're leaving. So the really great 19th century American theologians were the General Council ones. So they picked up and they went to Philadelphia. But I'll tell you a little ironic thing. I was interviewed for a job there. I'm so thankful that I had no chance. They already picked someone up. It looked so glamorous in a way, but that place was falling apart then. But they left because they didn't want to be Lutheran Presbyterians. So who was the person who was just made president and then kicked out as president? She was a Calvinist who taught at one Lutheran seminary and one Calvinist seminary. And they wanted this nice, warm, fuzzy Lutheran Calvinist image at their United Lutheran Seminary. And they're still divided to this day. But that's what the General Council was, mostly low church to the point of being hardly Lutheran at all. And they got better because they were so influenced by the General Council, by people like by Loy and Roy was in Iowa, and Leupold. There's some really great theologians, and Jacobs, Krauth, and Schmuck. Now you read those books, these are people that spent their lives trying to keep Lutherans loyal to the Lutheran Reformation. And so their insights are really worthwhile. And as I read them, I said, this is what we're doing today. we're giving up Lutheran doctrine for what the Calvinists and the rationalists like, and it's worse than ever before now.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Okay, good. So define for us, because a lot of people hear these terms, Pastor, and they hear, intuitu fide, in view of faith. Why is it so important to not only comprehend these issues, but also to believe them, to confess them, and what is at stake when we start kind of peeling away or rejecting these ideas? What is at stake here?
Yes, that's very important, because I think the slogan "in view of faith" and using it in Latin, and they added Latin words, you can make a longer thing out of it. And the idea is to make that an accusation. So if anybody started to talk justification by faith, you're not one of those in view of faith people, are you? Do you agree with that? And I forget whose catechism it was. Once I owned it actually, but they made that an automatic denunciation to talk about faith or justification by faith. So people became afraid of connecting faith with forgiveness and salvation. And I believe this comes from Calvinistic influence, where Calvin did not consider the Holy Spirit always at work in the Word. Now, that's absolutely consistent in Luther right from the beginning. And that's why there was almost no variation in Luther's teaching. He was not so Roman about Mary later in life. And he said, we have to accept that she was a mortal woman after all. But that was all of his training. So just like us, we have to look at our background and realize that, we were not born with the Book of Concord in one hand and the KJV in the other. We were probably influenced by rationalists, by evolutionists, by people that were far out but sounded appealing at the moment.
Yes.
And so if you do not accept the Holy Spirit always being efficacious through the Word and the Word alone, so that they're never separated, Calvin always taught against that, then it's hard for people to conceive that the gospel simply plants faith in people's hearts. It's hard for them to conceive that an infant who is baptized with the Word has faith placed in his heart because he has heard the gospel and he has become a believer.
Yes.
And I said to a girl who was being